Hello and welcome to the Small Business Happy Dance. This is the first episode in my brand new podcast, and the name came from the quote, which I'm not sure who to credit for the quote, but if anyone wants to, you can comment in the comments below, and I will definitely make note of it. It's from the "When you buy from a small business, an actual person does a little happy dance." And is that not true? If you are in business, you will know what I'm talking about. It's particularly small businesses because they are millions of us around the country. And I wanted to create a podcast where I could chat to them and learn all about their stories and their history and what keeps them going, what motivates them. And so hopefully this will be a podcast full of lots of inspiring stories from lots of awesome people around the country. So today's guest, my very first guest, I'm so grateful for her for being a guinea pig, is Jo Hague, a textile designer based in Cornwall. Welcome, Jo.
Good morning, Rachel. This is just fantastic. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yes, a happy dance is what I do. Yes, when I sell a piece of work.
It's so lovely. I know that because I buy things on Instagram. I probably shouldn't say that because Instagram will be hitting me up for more things. But I love it because you get such great feedback from the little, the small businesses, and they give you such love. Like I always post it on my stories and tag them, and you always get the nicest feedback. And I always think you don't get that when you buy them from a big corporation. You don't get a little thank you and a nice message. And yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels like it's like a good feeling all around.
Yeah, it really is a good feeling. Win-win for me and win-win for the person who purchases the product. Yes, it's fabulous. It's a really good feeling.
It is. So do you want to tell me a little bit about your business?
Okay, as you rightly said, I'm a textile designer based in Cornwall, and I have my studio at home, which has good things and not so good things, depending on what's going on in the world, etc., etc. But ideally, I actually work as a three-dimensional sculptural designer, and I work with wall installations. So I make large and small wall installations using discarded plastics, because I'm very passionate about keeping plastics out of landfill and incineration. So I harvest plastics, industrial plastics, for instance, things like garden netting, scaffolding netting, mesh matting that's used along the roads for soil erosion, preventing soil erosion and coastal erosion. So I use the industrial plastics with various different techniques, and then I combine them with organic fabrics, for example, 100% wool felt, and then I do my stitching. And I make these large and small wall installations for interiors.
And the process of making them, because if you're watching this podcast, you'll be able to see, but if you're listening, I'll put some links in the description so you can go to Jo's Instagram and there'll be a little video showing some of the things we're talking about, because you kindly have sent me some footage and we'll put it in here about you making it. And I do a bit of sewing. I will not profess to be a great sewer, but I love it. I love seeing how things are made. So do you want to just talk me through a little bit about that process? Like, how did it even come about? I just love it.
Okay, all right. Well, basically, the work that I do now literally started when I was on holiday on the Isles of Scilly back in 2018. It was the very first morning of the holiday, and I got up, it was about 6 o'clock, and I went out walking on the beach near to where we were staying, and nobody was around. It was absolutely magical. And as I walked into a particular area, there was some matting coming through the sand dune. And I walked towards the matting. I put my hands on this particular matting, and I knew within seconds, I just knew that this was going to take me somewhere. I don't know. It was just innate. It was just hit me in the gut. So I played around with this plastic, and I looked at it. I put it in my hands. I smelt it. I did all the senses, and I just knew I had hit something. So this large matting was you could see it wasn't functioning in the right way anymore by holding the sand back. So I contacted the council. I set up a collaboration with the council on the Isles of Scilly, and they said that they were going to be removing this matting because it was no longer working anymore. It had ceased its function. And would I like to use some of it for the last year at university, my third year? So I did exactly that. And all the time through my third year at uni, I had the support of the council on St. Mary's on the Isles of Scilly, a chap called Julian Pearce, who was absolutely fabulous. So I bought, at that time, he said, snip off what you need. I bought some of the plastic back and I took it into uni and I started working and playing around with it. I hand stitched, I put it through the heat press. I did all sorts of different things. And then I graduated and I found that I wasn't just looking at the matting that I was using on the Isles of Scilly. I was actually finding pieces of discarded garden netting in people's houses, but also nurseries, garden nurseries had garden netting just sitting in their yard where it had either been used and they were no longer using it and they hadn't actually thought about doing something with it. So I would go around the nurseries and ask if I could have some of the beautiful colors of netting. And then I went on to look at scaffolding. So instead of looking down at the ground, I was looking up in the air and looking at scaffolding netting. So I started collaborating with some of the local scaffolders, and they were just amazing. They were just such fun to be with. So they would turn up with their dumpy bags of scaffolding netting after they had finished a job. I would go through the dumpy bag, so I'd spread it all out, take out things like feathers and plaster and all the debris, and then I would literally cut out the best of that netting with a pair of scissors. Once I'd got what I wanted, I then would put the netting into rainwater that I had collected through the winter periods. So I have sort of dustbins around the garden where they're collecting rainwater. So this is all natural. This is not pulling on the sources of the meter, the water meter in the house, etc. So they would stay in the dustbins with water, and then I would literally wash the pieces of plastic out. Then to dry the pieces of scaffolding netting, garden netting, meshing, whatever it was, I would then spread it out across the lawn or across the patio, wherever I could. And then the wind would literally dry the plastic. When it was dry, I would then bring it in, put it on a table, roll it up, and then I would put it into storage. And that's exactly where it all sits, in storage and ready for me to then go in, choose my color palette, and then start combining those pieces of plastics with the organic felt. And then I started looking at stitching. And mainly I use the overlocker. That's mainly my signature, I think, is the black overlocking threads. And yeah, I just went from there. So some are large, some are small, some are sort of mediocre installations, mainly geared for the commercial market, hotels, restaurants, places like that, commercial environments. Yes.
Jo, I didn't, just so we're full disclosure, we did have a little chat the other day, but I didn't specifically ask you these questions, and I'm loving it. I didn't realize you used all the like rainbutt water, and
yes,
so it's totally feels like a really organic process, even though you're using extremely man-made materials.
Yes,
in terms of the plastic. And I love that
yes.
you're recycling it. And what do the like how, what's the reception when you go and approach somebody, the people on the scaffolding, and what do they feel about it? I'm just curious.
They're flabbergasted. They're absolutely flabbergasted. And it's so lovely because what I tend to do is when I see a color on a piece of scaffolding that I haven't got, I've nearly got all of them now, I have to say. So I'm really pleased. But when I haven't, and I need to go and approach a scaffolding chap, because they're nearly all men, is that I actually take some samples of what I do. So I can actually say, guys, this is what your netting produces for me. So I take some tiny little samples, different colors, different stitching, different sizes. I've got a box full of samples. So then when they see what the scaffolding netting can actually make, they never, ever, I always walk away and they're saying, oh my goodness, I never would have thought, or how can you reimagine scaffolding netting? They just, it blows them away. And I have to say, that is my happy dance. That's the start of the happy dance, is seeing how people react, because I think it just takes them away from what they would normally be doing each day or for a job. And it takes them to a magical world where they've really never thought of reusing discarded netting in any shape or form. Yeah.
I just, I love it. What's that phrase? One man's trash is another man's treasure. That's
Yes.
so accurate here, because I bet they're thinking, oh, we've just got to lob this in the bag and get rid of it.
Yes, they do.
And you're thinking this could be reimagined into the
Yes.
most beautiful and inspiring artwork. Like, I have been privileged enough. I will insert video, or I will insert some photos of Jo's work here so you can have a look. And as I say, if you're listening, then you can head over to Jo's Instagram and have a little look. It's just, I just think the whole thing is so inspiring. And so what triggers the inspiration for each piece? Is it, oh, it's the color, or I just fascinated. Tell me more.
Well, inspiration comes from many, many aspects all over Cornwall. The inspiration is based here in Cornwall. So I could go out with my camera, which I do very often, nearly on a daily basis. And I walk around the lanes with the dog. I look at shape, I look at color, I look at size, I look at all sorts of things. But to give you an idea of what I'm working on at the moment, I'm actually looking at, and I'm amazed that I'm actually saying this, but I just love it. And it's so interesting, the research, because every project takes me on some research about Cornwall, and every piece of work is named after a place in Cornwall, or a cove, or a beach, or a point, or a bar. Oh, so it I just connect. So what I'm working on right now are the Daymarks and the beacons. And it literally started by me playing with some black fruit cage netting, different color felts. And I was just literally sitting in my studio a few days ago, playing around with the colors. And I thought, hang on a minute, I love these colors. This is real impact. This is really different. And so I started researching where in Cornwall uses red, black, and white. And it came up with the Daymarks at Gwenup Head, down near Land's End. So I started researching Daymarks. So now then that leads me on to think, okay, shape. So a Daymark from the Gwenup Head, which as I said, I'm working on now, is actually cone shape. So I've never done a cone before. They've always been squares and rectangles. So I'm still using the main structure of balls and strips, the overlocker, the heat press, all of that. But I'm actually taking them into shapes, different forms now. So the Gwenup Head, which it will be called, or the Runnel Stone, because it's known as the Runnel Stone Daymark, will be in a cone shape. So now I'm looking for other shapes of Daymarks and beacons in Cornwall.
And
so that's how it starts.
And what is a Daymark?
A Daymark is what is used for navigation. So ships, boats will obviously look for these beacons, these concrete Daymarks, or brick, Victorian brick, whatever it might be, Daymarks on the headlands to help to navigate them, to warn them. Basically, the Daymarks warn them that there is danger and to stay away from that point, that head, whatever it might be. But it's just, I mean, yesterday I was researching and hours were passing, looking at different Daymarks and shapes and when it was used and when it was built and who built it. Yeah. So every piece that I make, large, small, whatever it might be, has got history to it. So you just hit the name. And also when I put it up on my website, I tell you where my inspiration has come from. And a lot have come from the Isles of Scilly, because I go there every year with the family on holiday. And I've been going there since I was 8. So it's in my blood. It's in my DNA.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that story and how the inspirations come about. And I, c- I'm, I am here for seeing the finished result of this. I can't wait.
Neither can
um,
I. I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but it's exciting in the process.
when do you think it'll be done?
Oh, I'm not saying. I have no idea. I have a busy life.
So, how long have you been in business then?
I actually graduated from uni round about May 2019. And as soon as I left, I signed up with HMRC in the June of 2019. But it actually didn't, by the time I got my studio set up in the summer of 2019, I didn't actually really get my first big challenge for some work until October, November. And that's when the ball started to roll. So I suppose in answer to your question, Rachel, it would be what, coming up for 2 years, maybe? But as you know, the last year has been quite difficult. But this year, 2021, is a different story. It's great.
I was going to ask actually how COVID has impacted you, because there's been a lot, of things written and on the news about artists performing as well as other artists, how they've been impacted by COVID, and it just interested
Yes.
how that has impacted you in your business.
Well, it impacted massively, to be absolutely honest, because on the 28th of March 2020, I had made some very large installations and some small installations, and I had an exhibition booked at the Bedruthen Hotel. The gallery was set up, all the work was in, all the labeling had been done. And then suddenly on the 23rd of March, Boris put the hammer down. Everything had to be cancelled, everything stopped. And I have to be honest, I did find it difficult for the first few months. I thought my whole world had gone, everything I'd worked hard for, leaving work and then going to uni. And I just thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What's the purpose, etc. And it wasn't until an Instagram post came up from Outset Cornwall, which is a national funded government program for people who wanted to start businesses and looking at all different aspects. And I thought, right, let's do this. It might be the kick I need. It might get me back into a better frame of mind and to start to be more positive about my work, etc., and help to turn my mindset around. And sure enough, it did. I signed up. I did 5 weeks of modules: finance, marketing, how to sell your work, etc., etc. Team were amazing. And by the time I'd finished that program, which was, as I said, 5-6 weeks later, with a massive amount of support from Outset, I then knew I was back in the world again. And the energy was completely different. I felt as if I was on fire again. And, I was excited about life and work. And all the time, though, I was still doing small samples and still trying to pick the needle up, still trying to get on the overlocker. But it was really, really hard because there was no aim. There was no purpose there. I couldn't get out to show my work. I couldn't do exhibitions. I couldn't do fairs. I couldn't do anything. And my peers were all finding the same, exactly the same. We were Zooming and chatting and trying to support each other and keep each other going. And we were learning lots of lessons, all of us. We were having to be a lot more open-minded and more diverse in the way that we were actually working, to be more creative. And then, of course, online things started to happen. And you're either an online person or you're not. And I'm not particularly. I like to actually feel touch, smell, explore, rummage, salvage. I like to be out in the world, and collecting my bits and pieces that I need. And I'm much more of a one-to-one, face-to-face person. So I think that's what I found difficult, was not being face-to-face with people. But 2021 has completely turned upside down for me. You know, my work is out now. I'm in hotels and restaurants. I've got exhibitions down on the Lizard and up at Morganporth at Newquay. And I'm getting some online sales, which is great. And life is looking good. Yes, much better year. Can't believe it.
Whereabouts can people find that work then?
Well, on my website, I have a shop. So you can see all the different things that I make. You can always contact me if you want me to take a commission and, you know, to literally do a piece of work, big or small. I'm so excited when people come say to me and say, Jo, you know, recently I did a retirement for a person's kitchen. So they sent me photographs of the colors in their kitchen, and I looked at what I had and pieces of plastic, and I worked with that person, conversations backwards and forwards to get exactly their small installation right for the kitchen. So there's my website, and little exhibitions down at the Bowgie Gallery on the Lizard. And then there's the Create Gallery at Bedruthen Hotel. But then there's some big pieces. There's a very big piece, which I'm so thrilled with, within the Bedruthen Hotel. And then down at Asquith's restaurant, which is a Michelin plate restaurant in Lostwithiel. So, yeah, just out and about. And, you know, a couple of commissions have come in recently, which I'm really pleased with. So life is looking good. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, you got your artwork back out there into the actual real world. I like it.
I have, yeah. And each day it's getting better. Yes.
Yes, definitely. I will put a link in the description to Jo's website and to her Instagram, so you can go and find her and find all of her beautiful work. The other thing I wanted to ask you was, what piece of advice would you give to a new business owner? So if someone was setting up, maybe doing something similar, what piece of advice do you wish you had been given when you set up?
I think the biggest bit of advice is, if you want to do your own business, do it. Life is too short. Just do it. If you know it's right for you, do it. But there is a lot in the process of the doing. So it's things like doing your research. And I would definitely say that the outset, Cornwall, there's all sorts of national programs. I would definitely say, get yourself booked onto a program, because, and they're generally free. So you may as well take it up, because it is so supportive. So look for a national program. If you want to do it, you will succeed. It's hard work. It's really hard work. And it can be quite lonely, because you're working on your own a lot of the time. So networking is incredibly important, is to meet up with other people, as I say, within your tribe of whatever your creativity is, whether that's sculpture, ceramics, textiles, glasswork, is try and communicate with others and have the flexibility to do it if you're fortunate enough to be able to do that. And maybe a little bit of funding behind you, or the program, the national program, will help you with funding as well, where to look for. But I think if you can feel the fire in your belly, don't ignore it, do it, work on it, and just get going. Yes. And speak to others. That's more than one tip.
I like it though. That would definitely cover all the things I would tell somebody. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have this sort of like rose tinted view of what it is to be freelance or work for yourself or self-employed or whatever. And actually, you know, the reality of it it can be very brutal. And you also have to do every single task. IT problem,
Yes.
if you're an employee, you have an IT line that you ring up and you say, please, can you help me with this? No, 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 here, I am IT. I am customer service. I am marketing. I
Yes.
am everything,
Yes.
and the buck stops with you. And in some ways, that is awfully empowering. In some days, that means Googling absolutely everything that I need to get done
Yep.
because I don't know how to do it. But also sometimes it's knowing when to ask for help. So, for instance, I have employed an accountant, not because I can't do my accounts. I have done my accounts before, but because I leave my accounts to like the 20th of January and then spend 10 days trying to get back in my account. I don't want to be doing my accounts at this point. So I think that, sometimes you need to know thyself and really interrogate the things that you can delegate, what's
Yes.
important. And if money is an issue, then sometimes you can do swaps and things with people. But I think that sometimes earmarking money to get my accounts done is money well spent for me, because it just stresses me out so much. I actually very good at keeping the records, so I have a whole like coding system which my accountant's quite pleased with, in terms of each individual receipt has its own special code. But in terms of actually getting it done, it's not in it's it's a real challenge. So I think sometimes you need to ask for help, and like you say, finding a course. I recently went on one, and I just loved it because I was with other people who were we weren't all doing the same work, but it was just being with other business owners who had gone through the pandemic the same as I had. And it was just, I felt less alone. And,
Yes.
I think that that's really important. I think that's great advice, Jo.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah,
think you're absolutely right, Rachel. I had to do my accounts, and I also found a bookkeeper because, to be honest, um, I wanted to use my time to design, to create, to do what I'm supposed to be doing as a textile person, designer. And I keep, like you, the records. I am so organized. So I keep the records. I'm on it. As soon as there's a receipt, as soon as something comes in or out, it's there, it's recorded. And I just felt it was money well spent. Exactly the same as you, money well spent. Otherwise, I will be there for hours, months, stressing out, getting up in the middle of the night because I've forgotten something. Then that affects my work. So do what you're good at, and what you're not so good at, pass to somebody else because
yes.
they're good at it.
Yeah, yeah. And also this year I decided I was getting them done before January. So they are in the process of getting done at the moment, which was, frankly, for me, I've never I've never done that before. I've always been a January. You're like, oh, I'll get over Christmas. And then you're like, all of a sudden, it's like the 29th of January. You've got no idea what code it is. And it turns out I have no idea who I am because I still couldn't get through when they asked me all these questions. So I just thought this year, I'm going to make it easier on myself.
Yes.
Somebody is a professional. I sometimes like that they can give you, review it properly and from a professional standpoint. And so it's made me feel a bit better, although there still need to get done. But this is, what so far ahead of what I normally do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Definitely.
how do you make difficult decisions in your business? Have you had to make any?
Oh, I would say yes. How do I make difficult decisions? I sleep on them. That is number one for me. If I want to do something and make a difficult decision, I will actually leave it maybe for a day or two and think it through, absorb it, think about it when I'm out walking the dog, when I'm out maybe gardening, when I'm doing the ironing, whatever it might be. Is I don't I'm not rash. I am in lots of other things. I'm quite a impulsive, spontaneous person. But when I'm making decisions about my business and my work and making the right direction and business decisions, I will sleep on it. And then I will ask others. So I will ask members of the family or some other close creatives, what do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it might work? Because if you ask others in and around that you can trust to give you really good, honest, open feedback, they may spark another idea or another way of looking at something when you're making a difficult decision. Yes, I think that's how I work when I make difficult decisions. And I knock it backwards and forwards, and I write things down. Oh, I'm great at spider graphs, spider maps. So I'll literally sit down and do a spider map, and I'll work out all the different factors and facets, and then try and come to some sort of conclusion.
Oh, I love it. I hadn't thought
What do
about
you?
I hadn't thought about the spidergram, but I like the idea of that. Yeah. Get it all, get that spidergram down. I love it. Yeah. Write it out, think it through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Now,
think that's sorry, Rachel. I
that's all
think
right.
that's because I'm a visual person. That's the way I learn. That's the way I communicate, is because I'm much more of a hands-on visual person. I'm not an academic where everything sits in my head and I write reams. No, it has to be simple in front of me, and then I can see the sense of it.
I think that also goes back to running your own business, that you end up learning more about yourself and your
You do.
preferences than I have ever done it working for a business, because you're often trying to adapt to their culture, or that the environment can impact how you behave and everything. Whereas when you're let loose into the wildness of being freelance or self-employed, you learn so much about how you react in certain situations. If there's no constraint of the rules of a manager above you or rules within a company, then you are free to think in your own way and deal with situations in your own way. And you learn preferences about how I prefer to work. And I actually prefer to do it like this and not take my notes on a laptop. I prefer to write them out in colored pens or whatever it is. My diary at the moment is a bullet journal, and as in for my work day, I like to plan out my actions, and I got a load of like the most random stickers. Like I've got spacemen and I've got, cars and whatever. But, I can imagine me working in a very corporate environment, people being like, what is she doing with all these stickers?
Yes.
And if I'm having a really, I've got a big task to do, I will award myself a sticker with a smiley face. I'm such a 5-year-old and it comes to these, but I've worked in corporate places. I can imagine people being like, what is she? She's given herself a sticker, like a reward chart. But you got to work out what works for you. And
Yes.
yeah, I would agree with that. What one piece of advice would you give to not necessarily your customers, but customers of small businesses? Because I feel like customers also sometimes need to be educated when you're dealing with a small business.
Yes. I think a lot of people, maybe more now, they have the customer, the client, whoever it might be, has more understanding possibly now because of the last year that we've all been at home, where we've actually been encouraged to create in some shape or form. And I think maybe some of the customers that I have now and the people that I talk to are very considerate as to the amount of time things take to make or put together. Because when you're buying something and you see this beautiful piece of artwork, unless you're really in that world or experiencing it, you probably don't fully understand the passion, the time, the hours, the failures, the successes that go into that piece of work. So I think customers now definitely have more aware as to time, processes, the beauty, the slog, the excitement of things that are actually handcrafted, handmade, with love and time and care. And I think also kindness, because a lot of my work that I send out is beautifully packaged. It's when I'm packaging, there is my happy dance going on inside. You may not see it on my face or what I'm doing, but there is a really lovely warmth within me as I'm packaging, as I'm writing a note. And also all my work goes out with the raw sample, goes out with a sample. So the customer will receive a small card, and on there is hand stitched a piece of scaffolding netting, the threads, the felt, so that they can actually touch and feel the materials that I'm using. And then they can see how it actually, the outcome is within the installation, where I've gone through the process of a heat press or an overlocker, or hand stitched and constructed and put together. So that is something that actually I hit upon over the last year, and I'm so pleased I did that, because I get really good feedback, because people are not, when it's behind glass, you can't touch it. You don't fully understand what that piece of artwork is about. So that's why I send out a small sample of the raw, rough material, so they can see the beauty in how it's transformed. But the other thing that also came about in the last year, because I didn't sit on my laurels, excuse me, I didn't sit on my laurels during that difficult time that we all went through. I then looked at doing a certificate of authenticity. So on that, every piece of work has at the back the date that it was made, the signature of Joe Hague, the title. And that then, the reason why I've done that is because then it becomes a family heirloom. It can become an heirloom for your children if you're purchasing a piece of work for your children. It can be an heirloom for a friend, a nephew. Any piece that I do will give you what it's made of, the title, the date, the year, the signature. So that if and the reason why I suppose I do that is because my daughter will inherit some of the pieces of work that I have done, that I have around the house. And in years to come, 20, 40 years time, she'll look at that and she'll think, yeah, I do remember when mum made that. It was, I don't know, say May 2021, and we were going away on holiday. And I remember the stress that she had when she took it to the framers. Every piece tells a story. So that's why I do those pieces.
Yeah, I love it. And you're right. When, during COVID, lots of people took up new hobbies and everything, and started to, maybe go into, try out being creative and making things. And as you say, that when you start to, like, as I said, I do a little bit of sewing. And when I started learning to sew, it made me rethink how I felt about clothes, because you realize that the craftsmanship that has gone into those clothes,
Yes.
like it, I was only making a quilt, and I didn't do it in like the typical quilter's way. But even just doing the straight lines of it, I could understand, the skill that goes into it, the time, the physical energy of it, to literally get that piece done. And that's not even including how you make the fabric. And it made me really think differently about my clothing. And so, yeah, and you look after it more, and artwork will be treasured. And I've got pieces, as I say, from artists on one particular artist, actually a couple of artists on Instagram, and the one has written the nicest notes to me in the art, because I've bought, like, I think I'm up to 3 pieces of hers now. I just love her stuff, and she releases a new one and I'm like, oh, I might need to get that. And when you unwrap it, and it's a lino print one, it's, you can tell it's been made by hand, because it's not perfect, and I wouldn't want it to be perfect. It is perfect in my mind because I can see it's been made by somebody who really cares about what they've done.
Yeah.
They've thought through the whole process, they've thought through the paper, all of that, and then they've packaged it, and it's just so lovely. And she draws a little thing on the back of the envelope, and Yeah, and you get it and you're like, wow. And I've got other pieces that were photographs, and this person was in France and they were photographing every single day of the French lockdown. And so there's an Instagram story that represents the days that I bought, because she labeled them for each day. And so you know the story that went behind how that went. And I just think connecting on that level is so much nicer than buying something generic from a big corporation. You know, we won't name
Yes.
any, but
Yes.
so I can imagine somebody getting your artwork and feeling it and knowing that history of you've reclaimed and repurposed something that was going to go in landfill, or you know, and actually you've saved it from that, you've saved the environment, you've done it in an ecological way, and now you've made something incredibly beautiful. And I hope everybody who is only listening goes and has a little look at Jo's Instagram so you can see what I'm talking about here. It's just gorgeous. And I will include as well some clips about the making, because I love that's just me maybe, but I love to see the process behind it. And luckily in my family, everyone sort of makes things, so you get a different feeling about it than if you were disconnected from that process.
Mm.
You're not going to value it as much, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
exactly. You do. It's that word value. It really does. You feel, as the maker, you feel valued massively when somebody, wants a piece of your work or gives you a commission or just gives you some really positive feedback. It really makes you feel valued and everything you're doing. But also, like you said, when you're opening up your package or your print or your piece of textile, it's so personal. It's as if this has been, well, it has been made for you, but everything around it is personal to you, and you think, oh, this is so nice. It's just a completely different take on going into any big supermarket or any big store and buying something that is mass produced. I'm not knocking mass produced, because I have to use mass produce in some shape or form, but there's a different feel, without a doubt. Yes.
Yeah, and that connection as well with the artist, you know. I know that on, you know, social media, it can be very hard to grow and things. So every time I bought something from somebody on Instagram, or even if they're not on Instagram, but they've got an Instagram account, I will share it and tag them, because I want to tell everybody that follows me, even though that isn't lots of people, I want to tell them this is amazing. I love it. I bought some chocolates the other day. Oh my God, they were so good. They got me through post-vaccine feelings, you know, when
Oh,
you're feeling a bit rubbish. And I just tagged her, you know, tagged her company, and I got a message back to say thank you. And she didn't need to do that, but then it gives her good exposure. She can share it on her stories. Every little
mm,
bit that you can do for a small creator, like liking and commenting on their posts, even, you know, even if you haven't got time, just liking it makes a really big difference to the algorithms. And then sharing it on stories, and tagging the artist, and then, or the whoever you've bought it from, you know, it makes such a difference. And I think, you know, that's something to just think about. Anyone listening to this podcast, make sure you go on and like things and comment, because it will make people's day when you do
it
that.
does. It does. It really, really does make you feel as if, what you're doing is being appreciated. And you don't know, you could be inspiring somebody to pick the needle up. You could be inspiring someone to go and, play around with some clay. You just don't know the effect that you're having on the audience. And I think if you do get some feedback and comments, like you were saying, Rachel, it does make your day. It actually gives you the impetus to keep going. And that's what you need when you're working on your own, because you haven't got a team, you haven't got a support structure, you got no one around you apart from the dog and maybe, family members, whatever it might be. And if you're relating with the public out there in the world in some way, it's fantastic. Yes, it really, really helps to keep you going.
You've heard it here first, podcast listeners. You need to go on there and give your favorite artists or makers or whoever it is on Instagram a bit of love. You know, just go on and like a couple of their posts or comment. And and somebody will do a happy dance about that, even if you don't buy off them. But like I bought a card for my mom's birthday, and I shared it on my stories, and interestingly my sister went and bought a different one from the same person because she saw it. It was amazing. So you never know. I mean, that was quite close in terms of like she's a relative, but you never know when you share something you love on your stories whether someone else is going to see that and think, oh, I'm going to go off and buy that, and then you're going to make somebody, you know, very, very happy. And as I say, small businesses tend to keep the, you know, when money goes to small businesses, it tends to be keeping it in the local economy. You know, you're supporting people who are directly impacted by your purchase. And I mean, when you buy from a big supermarket, I'm fairly sure nobody does a happy dance. If I go and buy something from them, I don't think that happens. Unless I bought like the whole shop or something, but I don't think that would happen. So oh, Jo, it's been so lovely talking to you today. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I think no. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. It's lovely to talk about me and my work. I so very rarely have that wonderful opportunity. So thank you so much, Rachel. And I want to wish you good luck. And I've thoroughly enjoyed every single minute. Do we have to stop now?
I think I could talk to you all day.
Well, thank you once again. I've loved it. And no, I don't think so. I think I've practically covered everything. Yeah, it's just great. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you all so much for listening. If you are watching on YouTube, you can like and subscribe. Leave any comments you want down below, and I will check those out. And if you are listening on any other platform, then you can leave a review so that we all know whether or not you liked it. That'd be great. And yes, follow us on Instagram. I will leave the details in the description below. And and you will be able to check out the visuals if you are listening and you haven't watched the video podcast. So thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. And this was a Small Business Happy Dance. Take care. Bye. Hello and welcome to the Small Business Happy Dance podcast. This is our second episode and I'm so excited because I am interviewing Caroline B from B Retro. Hello, Caroline.
Hello.
What piece of advice would you give customers buying from a small business? Because I feel like it's different when you buy from a small business versus buying from a big corporation.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're buying from a small business, you are paying their rent, you're paying their bills, you're putting the clothes on their children's backs. You're not just a profit margin. You're a wonder. So when you see that person on that store like me smiling at you and going, "Oh, thank you so much," it really is meant, and it's so important. We wouldn't be here. Britain is a country of small businesses. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those wonderful customers buying small and buying local.